All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Accessibility and Inclusion Podcast Above and Beyond. Anthony Frisina here, as always, joined by Maddy Dever. Maddy, how are you?
I'm adjusting to being in a different location today, but we made it work.
Yeah, it does look different than our typical lives or podcasts, but
Yes,
today's a very special day, Maddy.
I
It's
know.
my birthday.
It's your birthday?
No, I'm
Really?
kidding. It's not.
Okay.
All right. It's
12 days from now.
international.
It's right now as of today we begin celebrating the 12 days of my birthday. Because my birthday is in 12 days. Oh, wait.
Ah,
You're talking about the International Day for Persons with Disability.
the 30th birthday of
Woohoo!
International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Celebrated as always on December 3rd, thanks to the United Nations General Assembly for declaring this day internationally. And it's been such an important day for me personally. I don't know about you, Maddie, but I always look at this day as a birthday. I always look at this, as reflecting on the past 365 days, and looking forward to the next 365 days. What has been accomplished, what we've been able to do, and what we can continue to do going forward.
It has been a topsy-turvy year for people with disabilities. We've had some really incredible wins, and we have a lot of hope for the future, and some really difficult times as well. Um, we're going to talk a lot about disability poverty today, but this has been one of those years where I feel next year has way more hope than this year did. But we got some pretty big things done this year, and I think looking back at that, we're in a better place than we were a year ago. Are we in the best place? No, but we're in a better place than we were a year ago for overall.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things about this year, Maddie, is you and I met.
I know. Actually, it was a year
W-
ago. It was last year's uh, not the conference, whatever you call it.
Met in
The
person.
Yeah, but in
Yeah,
person we met
in April.
in April. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, we did.
yeah, and we've known about each other and
Mhm.
each other's work, and the disability community is such a close knit, tight community. Anyway,
Yeah.
so a lot of people know what one another does, and
Mhm.
while that's great, and while that's important, we need to integrate or include. Sorry, I used the wrong word.
Yeah.
The power of allyship.
Yeah.
We need those without disabilities to work with us in amplifying inclusion to create a win for everybody.
Yeah. So much of the time, I mean, we toil because we have to. We need our world better. Whether it comes to income, whether it comes to support, income supports, employment supports, educational supports, PSWs. Like, there's so many areas that we are fighting because our lives depend on it. But it's great to see more allies coming alongside of us and amplifying our work. It's the foundation of the disability rights movement is nothing about us without us, and that means we we need our allies to bring us to the stage. We need our allies to make sure there's a seat at the table, and we need our allies to be able to amplify the things that we're saying so that our stories are heard and our needs get met. And this has been a good year for that. Um, just talking about the Canada Disability Benefit, the federal benefit that will hopefully provide us some income stability in the next year or two. But we've had so many people that aren't that don't have disabilities also telling the government this is a need that needs to be here now. This is a need that's important. This is a need that the large majority of Canadians agree with and are pushing for. And I think back 2, 3, 4 years ago, the talking about our barriers, the things that were causing us the most challenges and the most harm. It was really difficult to get um, non-disabled people to understand and see their role in helping us uh, um, um, have these barriers removed. And yeah, like I just look 4 years, and I feel there's a movement beyond the disability rights movement to help remove these barriers.
Yeah, and this year's theme is transformative solutions through inclusive development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world. And when I say that theme to you, Maddie, what does that mean to you?
It means that, all right, can you repeat that? I was listening to, and all of a sudden I just had a bit of a lack of coffee moment.
Aha, let's call it that. This is
Yes.
on TV now. Transformative solutions through inclusive development, the role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world.
It's a lot of words that means that we all need to work together to remove barriers. We need to use um, we need to use technology. We need to use systems. We need to make things even simply putting things in plain English can go a long way to remove some barriers. Sometimes I think just I've known that this is the theme for a while, and I've been scratching my head. It's a very highly intellectual word salad that really, at the heart of it, means what are the ways that we're doing to remove barriers? What are the things? Let's celebrate the things that are working and find the ways that innovate, find new ways where old ways haven't worked.
Right, and utilizing innovation, utilizing the technology that's
Mhm.
there. Technology is great when it works.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm gonna go there, Maddie. You know that I'm gonna
So
go there.
yeah, technology. Okay, so one of the problems that I personally have is that so much of the things that sustains my life requires electricity. And this year, I mean, I live just outside of Ottawa. I'm in Eastern Ontario, and this May we had whether it's called a Derico or a Direco, whatever. It was this fierce windstorm that lasted like 25 minutes and made it destroyed a large path of trees and hydro wires, and we were out of power for several days. Most people were out for about a week. I, for the most part, I'm either in a wheelchair, a powered wheelchair, or I sit in a recliner chair in my bedroom that requires power to get in and out. I have a CPAP at night. I can't sleep without it. I have cell phones and technology. I use Google Homes to be able to turn things on and off and communicate with other members of my family because I can't use my hands and arms and get around to do these things. When you're out of power, you lose all those abilities. And we also, in our community, our emergency center is on the second floor of an arena. So when there's a power outage, there's no way for people like me to get up in the elevator. It was this year showed a lot of places where how reliant on technology and to just be able to sometimes communicate, to be able to get around. You take that away, and your life is very different. And I'm very thankful that we have all of these tools that help me live, survive, as well as being able to have a quality of life outside of my house. But we've had several times of power outages this year, and it has just thrown me how reliant I am on it, but how thankful I am that it exists.
On that note, thank you, Rogers, for the events of April earlier this year.
Oh,
Uh,
that too.
let's. Well, Rogers ain't going to be a sponsor now, so. But anyway, yeah, that was an event in and of itself too. Yeah,
Yeah.
as you just said so eloquently, Maddie. Technology is so important. Technology is really what many people require or rely upon as
Mhm.
members of the disability community. So nonetheless, it was challenging nonetheless on that day in April, and it continues to be challenging when certain devices go down.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many areas that we who have disabilities get affected first and probably get affected the most, but we're the
Right.
last to be
Hello,
considered.
everybody. Welcome to the Accessibility and Inclusion.
Are you
What?
watching? Are you watching something? Are you watching the podcast again?
No, no, it just came up on my feed. I was just trying to set everything up here, make sure everything was set up. It was it just kind of just showed up there. But
It's
yeah,
okay.
sorry, Maddie, go
It's
ahead.
alive. Anything can happen. You know.
Right, right.
Exactly.
I just called
Um.
out Rogers. Yes, anything can happen.
Yeah. Exactly. The interesting thing is, yeah. So we're more and more we're being included in the end uh, result of something that a body of government or an organization wants to do, and that's good that we're being thought of and included. But because we're the most affected by um, government decisions and emergencies, we really need to start pushing our allies to getting us in the beginning of things. Ask us how things should be before you build it, because I don't know how many I don't know how many accessible in and bunny rabbit quotes things that have been built that we can't use properly or actually make things harder for us because the intention was good, but without actually asking us ahead of time, you end up getting things that are not so great. And I'm talking about curbs. Curbs and sidewalks and the design of universal communities without actually asking the people who are going to live there. Um,
And,
but
and ones that are going to benefit from it.
exactly. I mean, I'm glad more and more we're getting asked. I know in the autism world, I'm autistic as well as disabled wheelchair using guru. Um, but
Guru,
guru
sensei,
exactly
shaman.
exactly. Yes. Shaman. I'm breaking the song now, but I won't. I,
Go
I I
ahead.
know more and more in researchers and government agencies are asking me and other autistics about how certain things might affect, and we're looking at there's really beginning to look at invisible disabilities as well as the physical disabilities. And as I said, looking back, I'm really happy that this is for, right? I don't. I want to make sure that we're giving kudos to the places that are really making the changes, the internal thinking. I mean, we have ways to go to make it as fully effective as it could be. But like I look again, I'm looking now. 4 years ago, 4 years ago, again, we would be ending to have to complain about how things were done because we were never part of the process. We're beginning to be part of the process, and in some places that's great. In some places we need work, but we really need. And this is the thing that I'm finding is that more and more people are wanting to be allies, and we really need to um, we really need to augment that, develop that, um, and appreciate that because yes, there are 2.6 million people disabled in Ontario. Yes, there's 6.2 million people disabled in Canada. Yes, there's 1 billion out of 8 billion people in the world that are disabled. But our voices aren't louder than the rest. Our voices is for many of us, it's hard to raise our voice. For many of us, we're stuck where we are. And there are some of us, like yourself and myself, who have a little bit of privilege because we have a little bit more of ability to speak and explain our needs. We really need the allies who are the the rest of the percentage of people to come along and not lift us up, just put a megaphone in front, hold the megaphone in front of our face. Find the tables, find the things. When you see barriers, think like when you. we've had this conversation, and I think in our podcast on allyship that we had really early on in our podcast days, it's important for you who does not have disabilities to look around you and see what barriers might be there, and proactively see how we can resolve those. And when you see people struggling, what are the ways that you might not be able to fix them, but being aware of the barriers, and trying to find where's the table that we need to go to address the need here, address the barrier, so that we might be able to find a path to remove the barrier. It's yeah.
I mean,
Here's my
diversity is
ramble.
there you go. Diversity is being asked to being at the table. Inclusion is being asked to speak, and belonging is having your voice being heard.
Yeah.
And this day of all days really amplifies that message about being heard. And you just said the number, over 1.1. Pardon me, over 1.1 billion people worldwide identify as members of the disability community, and that's
1 billion people.
1 billion people.
Certainly over 9,000.
And it's a demographic that changes every day.
Yeah.
Every second, every hour, every minute.
Yep.
And we talked about the National Accessibility Week earlier this year, Maddy, and it's about being inclusive from the start. It first begs the question, why aren't we being inclusive from the start? And then it speaks to the fact that, we're going to do accessible, we're going to make things accessible, and we want your validation after the fact, rather than being inclusive from the start and getting our input, so nothing needs to be redone or retrofitted, because that's where the excessive costs come in, because we're not there to hold people accountable, as you talked about. Understanding the fact that, when something is not accessible, and again, it's a very subjective term to some degree when I say the word accessible. But when it's not accessible, what that says? Something very important. That says you don't belong here. And as condescending and as dehumanizing as that is the truth. You do not belong here when something is not accessible, or something that doesn't meet your needs. When you're talking about a commercial establishment, physical or invisible standpoint, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to use physical disability for a moment. I mean, I also experience indivisible disabilities, but sometimes it's the visual ones that make the most sense in terms of what's accessible, what's accessibility, what's inaccessibility. So we know that, right? We want to get to a particular establishment. Well, the first thing is we have to be able to get there. So, are the sidewalks accessible? Is there accessible transportation that can get us? So, all right, let's say we get there now. We need to get we need to get to a door. Is there a ramp? Because if there isn't a ramp, then it's not accessible. We can't get in. All right, it's got a ramp. Does it have a button on the door? And is the button clearly is easy to access, as well as not just be there? Okay. Oh, it's 5:00 and have they locked it, or does the button work all times that the door works? So if the button works all times, then it's accessible. So you're inside there. Now, can you navigate around the place? If it's a store, are the aisles wide enough? Are there things in the way? Can we access everything that an able-bodied person can access, not counting height? Obviously, we would need things helped with us that are above us. So, all right, we can move around. It's accessible. Can we get to the cash? Can we use the Interac machine? Is it at the far edge of the thing that we can't reach? Can we see the screen? Can we angle it? That's another set of accessibility. And then, can we get out the door? Is the button easily accessible again, or is it behind a lot of things that are in the way because they need places to put all their stuff? So if we can't reach it, it's not accessible. If we can and we can get out the door, great. So that's just, there's like 8 or 9 points of accessibility, but so many people think that it begins with the button on the door or the ramp at the door, and that's where accessibility ends. And there's each one of these things are barriers that we have to face, and we can use the same kind of concept when it comes to visually impaired, when it comes to people who are deaf, autistic. Like there's barriers, there's different barriers in front of each disability, but there are ways of mitigating all of these things. There's ways, if it's an intentional attitudinal adjustment, that if you do it when you're starting off, as I said, Anthony was talking about inclusion from the start. If when you're opening a store, if you're thinking these things, and you get some people with this disability to do a walkthrough before you open up, if you get these things done at the beginning, you have opened up a whole group of customers that you would not have been able to get if you were inaccessible. But if you open up and you're not thinking of that, and you start getting people that need it, in order to meet their needs, the cost of retrofitting is always more expensive. Now, it's something that we've also had a chat about the AODA, which I always forget the acronym. This is your place to fill in the acronym, Anthony.
Yeah, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act,
Yes.
enacted June 13th, 2005. So, but the thing with the AODA is it's a lot of information, but it has no teeth to it.
Yeah.
The enforcement of it. There's no law behind it. People try to, intimidate people with disabilities in a sense that, just be happy with what you have versus what you deserve. You said a lot of golden nuggets there, Maddy. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about, because you said the T word, and I wanted to bring that up. So, and I'll turn it over to you for that T word, Maddy. Go ahead.
Are we talking about transportation? Is that the T
Ding,
word?
ding, ding. We have a winner.
Yes, ding, ding, ding.
So-
Next stop is not available for you to get off. Sorry, there's no elevator.
Oh, that's another story in and of itself.
Oh, I know.
Just going back to before we really delve deeper into transportation, Maddy, you talked about it too. Navigation.
Yeah.
Wanting to get from point A to point B, having that advance notice that if something is under construction or something is down, knowing that in advance will help people with disabilities navigate their trips better. I know that's happened to me. And they always say, well, that's only going to be down for a short time. Or, ironically, I did an accessibility event with a local newspaper, and one of the biggest features was down. Now, it was restored 8 days later, but that's a little too long.
Yeah. So transportation. I mean, there's transportation on the roads and sidewalks. There's transportation in terms of transit, transportation in terms of taxi, and each one of those things are really challenging for us here in Ontario. And I don't think it matters where you live in Ontario. I'm in rural Eastern Ontario, and it's a challenge to get around. I can go on the road way more than I can go on the sidewalks. It's there's not as many cars, so it's for me, I have an issue with the sidewalk blocks that every I'm in a motorized wheelchair, so it's like ba-thump, 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 ba-thump. And motorized wheelchairs do not have great shocks, shocking as that may be. So you feel it, and every year each block shifts and becomes unbalanced and not level. So it's the longer the sidewalks is around, the harder it is for us to navigate. Then there's the curbs to get on there, which is a whole other issue. So for me, in my small town, I can go on the roads, but when I'm in cities, and especially Ottawa and Toronto, it's more challenging to be on the road, so I have to be on the sidewalks. So that's it. It becomes, curbs, I think, are the biggest issues that there's one time this summer that I had to go to Toronto, but I couldn't bring my motorized wheelchair, so I brought my daughter with me so that she could push me around in my manual wheelchair. And Toronto's not a great place for being in a manual wheelchair. It's not easy. It's really not easy. It's okay and adequate enough if you're in a motorized wheelchair, but manual, um, it's there's so much unlevelness. There's the curbs are so corroded in many places that it's really hard to get onto unless you go backwards, which is really awkward. So there's that aspect of transportation. But what's really, really, really problematic is that I think, I mean, I have not heard a person with disability say this is a great thing, and that's the transit. That's whether it's like the DART, whether it's Wheel-Trans, whether it's in Ottawa, it's Paratranspo. The things that are designed for us are not designed for us. They're designed for us to use, but they're not designed for us and our needs. Whether it's being able to schedule it when you want to schedule it, whether it's being able to do things impromptu and on the day, whether it's reliability of they're going to get there when they say they're going to get there, and it's and just the attitude that I think a lot of the the drivers, the workers, but especially the customer service folks, it's like we're made to feel that we should just appreciate what we've been given instead of let's build something that's going to work and meet our needs and going to be above and beyond the
No
transit.
no pun intended.
Oh, I just realized that. Yeah. Okay. Well, of course, the
Well,
Autistic Rambler is going to eventually say a pun about your name. So I should get 3 points for that because that's an unintentional pun. There you go.
welcome to Scrabble with Maddie and Anthony. Uh, but Maddie, it's a frustrating system, and as you said, something that's supposed to be built for us isn't for us.
Yeah.
They try to categorize us into one group of people when that's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
Because one size does not fit all. You spoke about getting around in Toronto. We had a conversation recently
Mhm.
with the city of Toronto.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which we really appreciate. Really
absolutely,
appreciate.
absolutely, and I think one of the takeaways that I got from that conversation, Maddie, is that we opened a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
I feel very optimistic about that conversation because
Yeah.
we've had a conversation, or we've had lots of conversations with many people. Some where they were just obligated to be there, versus some who genuinely wanted to hear what we had to say.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then there's taxis. And there right now, there is no practical reason for any taxi company to have accessible taxis. There's no money in it for them. The cost of buying accessible vehicles for taxi has doubled in the last 5 years. The cost of maintenance has tripled in the last 5 years, and they're not able to increase the rates to meet those things. I understand. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with taxi drivers who really, they're the only reason those that are still here are doing it is, there's got to be some sort of philanthropic, feeling to say to help us because really there's nothing in it for them. And since COVID began in Ottawa, we lost about 35% of our accessible fleet. The needs haven't changed. The needs for people with disabilities in the Ottawa area have not decreased. But it's a problem. I've mentioned this so many times in my county. We have 4 different towns, and we have I think 8 different taxi companies all together, and we have one accessible taxi that's not always running. And if it breaks down, there's no priority. There's no okay. So if a regular taxi broke down, they'd probably have it fixed within 2-3 days. But they also have other vehicles, so that
To
it's a
supplement
little
that,
bit of
yeah.
a loss. But they're going to work as fast as they can to get it back up because it's money to them. When it comes to the accessible van, it's like it might take a week or 2 or 3. When it gets back, you'll be able to use it, and it's frustrating. It's an attitude thing, but I understand the cost part of it too. And so, you and I, we like talking about, it's easy to talk about problems, but we also like to talk about solutions, because
Which is what
without
we do.
some,
Yeah.
yeah, without some highlighting of the things that can be or should be done and can be done, I mean, all this is a vent, and I like to ramble, but I don't like to ramble on without offering some suggestions, some alternatives, as well as really identifying this isn't a want. These aren't wants. These are
Mhm.
needs that we have.
And necessities and quality of life.
Exactly.
Now,
Bare
and
necessity.
yeah, I'll give you an example, Maddie. I took our local paratransit into Burlington for an event earlier this year, only to take an accessible cab from the Burlington Transit to where I needed to be. The event started in and around 7. I got there quarter after 8 because not only are our needs not met, our quality of life and our ability to choose is also taken away from us.
Yeah.
And disability rights are human rights. To get where I needed to be, I had a 6:30 pickup and didn't come till close to 8 o'clock because of the lack of vehicles. I like how they offer excuses. Everybody's passing the buck, but nobody's
Yeah.
willing to take the accountability head on when it comes to transit and when it comes to providing solutions for the dignity and the rights of people with disabilities. You talked
Mhm.
about it just earlier, Maddie. It is expensive
Mhm.
uh, uh, to to upkeep a cab. To get from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this cab driver that I got on this event finally to get there was annoyed with me because he had to go all the way from one end of the city to a different stretch of the city and blah blah blah. I appreciate what they do and what their support is, but we need more. We need dignity and with respect. We need to get there at certain times. And the funny part is when you're booking an accessible cab, they acknowledge the fact that they're not reliable. What does that say about an organization? We can't guarantee a time where we're going to pick you up. You want to call? Sure, we'll get there
Yeah.
when we get there. So people with disabilities' lives are on a uh, whenever we can get there kind of scale.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So the biggest thing that we need to see shift is attitude. Because when you shift the language, shift the attitude, you're going to get different prioritization. But we need, you know, honestly, one of the things that we've been kicking around the idea in the Ontario Disability Coalition is this year, coming year, doing a full survey on the needs of people with disability when it comes to transportation and transit, um, and across the province, so that we can have some raw data to bring to the different levels of government to say, hey, this is the reality on the ground. It's been anecdotal for the last couple of years, but we see these needs here, and here's what you can do to help us. And one of the things is it would be really helpful, is for the provincial government or the federal government, through the use of the gas tax, HST, or whatever, is find a way of providing incentives for the purchase of accessible vehicles in a taxi fleet, and finding ways to encourage intercity or intra town transportation services. That in my county, I've talked with a lot of the councilors, I've talked to mayors, and we don't have the same funds available at the same scope that large municipalities do that could have a transit fleet. We need the ability to have, more than just medical transportation covered. We need to be able to have quality of life transportation for people with disabilities at an affordable rate. So I can think of so many ways that we could see a complete improvement, a whole level measure more, that I don't think is really a change of cost necessarily, just a change of priority and understanding the priority and understanding the needs. I mean, we talk a lot about, the stories, and we're seeing in media more and more of these stories of these transportation fails. It's systemic, so we need to fix the system.
Absolutely. And you segue nicely onto the next point that I wanted to bring up, Maddie. Strategically, um, by design, it's those without disabilities mindsets for the most part that want to try to manipulate members of the disability community to think we're the problem, we're the
Yeah,
burden, when in fact the system, as you just alluded to, is the one that's broken. You know, it's almost as if, well, we gave you this, but you want more. You want
yeah,
more. When's enough enough? You're never going to reach the level or the plateau of those without disabilities. So why
yeah.
keep trying? As sad as that may sound, that's the
I know.
reality of it.
And if Doug Ford was right here right now, I would say to
Uh-oh.
him, Dougie, we can be a great asset in our communities if we're only given, if only some of the barriers that we experience are taken away. They're small things, right? It's the transportation barriers. They're big problems, but small fixes. And you know what I'm going to ask right now. You know what I'm going to segue into right now, Doug. Ontario Disability Support Program should never be considered social assistance. We have disabilities, and it's your responsibility, your um,
Accountability.
accountability. Like, your is it fair for people with disabilities to be kept under poverty, significantly on poverty? You have the power to fix this. You have the power to change this. Doubling ODSP brings us slightly above poverty. And we all know, based on all the research done, that people with disability have more needs, have higher costs than people without. So we really need, the ability for us to work is affected by our ability to have housing, which is affected by our ability to have income. You increase the income, our ability to have stable housing increases. Having stable housing means we have the possibility for those of us who can work, which isn't most of us. With stable housing, we can get stable employment. With stable employment and the stable income, we have the ability to have healthy nutrition, healthy diets. And then with healthy diets, we have, much less chance of diminishing medical problems, and our mental health is going to be better overall. And the cost of all these other things that I'm talking about, get lowered. So it's actually a net benefit to do the small thing of increasing the ODSP. You would unleash the power of community inclusion as well as economic inclusion if you do that one thing. We need it so badly, because without it, we have medical issues, we have homelessness, we have mental health problems, and then we have people choosing death or dying because they can't live on what we've got. So, Dougie, this part of this message is for you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Maddy Dever. Ta-da! Well said. I muted the mic. I just let you speak so eloquently and so openly about how important that is.
Yeah,
Quality, we're not the ones uh, trying to beg for abundance. we're trying to get the noise out there and good noise out there for equity.
Mhm.
Disability, as you just talked about, Maddie, costs more. When you're born with a disability, you're born into legislated poverty. You know, ODSP is 40 to 50% below the poverty line.
Yep.
The in Hamilton, uh, the suggested livable income is $19 an hour.
Yeah.
As we continue to grow, as we continue to evolve, and you keep more and more people with disabilities left behind, you're doing a disservice to that group at large.
Mhm.
And as I said earlier, disability is an inevitability. It could happen to anyone at any time. So why aren't we utilizing our strengths in the abundance of disability members that we have and putting them to good use, and
Yeah.
not only putting people with disabilities to good use, but actually being compensated for our value in our community.
And we know, like, it's really about priorities. We know the money is there to do the important things, but the choices to do other things, every decision that um, any level of government makes that isn't put towards solving the crisis that we're in ODSP and in people with disabilities, every cent spent someplace else is money that's keeping us or pushing us lower. You talked about the 40 to 60% uh, you know difference between what we get in ODSP and what the poverty line is. Every month that gap widens,
Mm-hmm.
especially in high inflation times right now. It's like, as I said, so we were able to this year, the disability community and all the organizations during the election, we were able to hammer the message: double ODSP now, double ODSP now, double ODSP now, to the point where the PCs, after their budget, changed their mind and put a 5% in. So that's a huge win, even though it's not as helpful as we really need. We were able to get the NDP to change from 20% to doubling ODSP. We were able to make the Liberal Party very uncomfortable with their they're not doing that, to the point where many members felt it's like, but we really should be doing this, but we're not. Why isn't leadership following along here? Um, we've been able to get the message, and we've been able to, in the federal sense, we've got the Canadian Disability Benefit, which got reintroduced in June. It got, it was the last thing they did in the summer, before the summer. The first thing they brought back when they came in the fall. We've had a lot of really good rallies in Ottawa, rallies in Toronto. The public is very, very much in favor of this. We see change is about to happen. The Disability Inclusion Action Plan is another thing where we're really looking at how does disability affect us in every different sector? How do we improve the lives? How do we remove the barriers? Where are the barriers? I mean, I'm phenomenally um, appreciative of this major shift in thinking that we in the disability community have been pushing for decades, but it's finally starting to align. We're seeing, let's talk about wheelchairs on airplanes. We've had some really major um, uh, uh, problems being visually seen. We've seen media talk about it. We've seen Minister Qualtrough and Secretary of State and the Secretary of Transportation in the states, Pete Buttigieg, say we need airlines to look now at how do we make sure that people can bring their wheelchairs on the plane, you know, instead of having to be forced into little wheelchairs which remove their dignity. We're seeing all of these things being talked about and the hope of movement on it. So I look back at this year. You know, we've had some big struggles, we've had some big successes, but I'm really, really hopeful towards 2023, when we celebrate next year, when we celebrate the 31st anniversary of this day, I want us to look back and say, wow, it could be good. We just need to all work together. People with disabilities, and especially allies. Let's make this next year the year that we remove more barriers than any other year before that.
I love that. I love that. And you talk about it, Maddie. When you remove a barrier, the subsequent barriers get much more easier to remove. The
Yep.
idea of the airplane, being more accessible, and those chairs that you're talking about, those Washington chairs. I don't know about you, but I fit half a butt cheek on those chairs as you're trying to navigate those aisles. So I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to like the dignity and respect behind that. Um, and it also helps when, and I say this with respect, that when a wheelchair breaks down through an airplane or an airline services, that it's a large name in the disabled community that it happens to,
Yeah.
who has the clout to
To raise
amplify
it.
that message and
Yeah.
who are in the wrong. Understanding the fact that we have to work together. We can't work within our own community and expect to make change. We
Yeah.
need that allyship and understanding that our words aren't gold, but our words do mean a lot. And
Yeah.
we cannot compromise cost. We have to look at it as an investment, understanding that the cost and the return on the investment will pay for itself down the road.
Yep. It's it's an interesting time to live in, and I think of, like, there's so many people that right now won't can't take on some of the opportunities that are out there because of the lack of transportation, the lack of accessible transportation, whether it's by flight. I mean, I personally, as I said, I'm in a motorized wheelchair, and I've seen some of the things, the stories that happen, and it looks like somewhere between 10 and 20% of wheelchairs are damaged eh, eh, uh, 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 in their flights, and that's like 1% is bad. 10 to 20% is horrific. I I would love to be able to do things across Canada and the States, but how I would do that right now would be very challenged. You know, so I like taking the train. Here's a shout out to Via. Via is extremely accessible, and they're very, very focused on the customer service for folks in wheelchairs, folks that are like several disabilities that I've talked about. I it's cheaper for me to go by train from Smith Falls to Toronto than it is for me to go from you know Carlton Place to Smith Falls, which is 15 minutes away, but it costs more, and it's sometimes I can't even access that transportation to get me from where I live to that train station 15 minutes by car down the road. Um, it's there are barriers, and there we just need um, we just need them addressed. We need to make them more public, and we need to have think of the solutions so that this can change. And there are 1,000 ways that if we were a solution oriented people, there are 1,000 ways we could figure out to make this like these barriers don't exist for people without disabilities, and we need to have a world where you know uh, the barrier any barrier should be defeated, whether it's for people with disabilities or whether it's people without disabilities. If it takes 2 days to fix a car, it should take 2 days to fix an accessible van. If it takes 2 days to fix a door handle, it should take 2 days to fix a button. If it takes 2 days to fix a dimmer switch, No, I don't know what the analogy is there. I was just thinking of
Well,
did yeah.
well,
I,
here's
I
the
lost
here's
my
the
I lost
thing.
my train there.
Here's the
Excuse
thing.
my friends.
There's companies. They got to order parts, and then they say they get their parts from overseas, and yada yada yada. There's this thing called Amazon that you can get things overnight to you. Ha!
Wow.
What a concept.
Wow.
And if you're a Prime member, you might even get it same day. Um,
Amazon
and you
Prime.
can,
All
and,
those
you-
good. Roll out.
oh wow, okay. I have never seen you that red, Maddie. Oh wow,
It's the lighting.
no, it isn't. Oh gosh, but getting back to why we're here, International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I'm grateful for the amount of progress that has been made, but I'm grateful for the opportunities that we have and we will continue to have.
Yeah.
I will just say this shamelessly, or with no shame, actually. Christmas is coming around the corner, so this. Speaking of Amazon, see how I segued there? This book is available on Amazon. And through me as well. Send me an email, info@anthonyfrisina.ca. Um, makes a great Christmas gift for families to to gain perspective
Yeah.
about accessibility, about inclusion,
Yeah.
about the MICE principles that I talk about:
It'll
motivation,
be a great
innovation,
Hanukkah present too for
inspiration,
those of you who celebrate Hanukkah. And
celebration,
those of you who
education,
don't,
and
hey,
empowerment.
just buy it. Just buy it for
Hanukkah
no
as
reason at
well.
all. Yeah, just buy it.
Yeah,
No
just
reason.
buy it because
Buy it.
it's
Yeah.
good. It'll change your life. It certainly has changed mine. And I'm not
So
only
what's interesting, plugging a book at this point in the live really makes it a bookend.
Are you done? Is that what are you trying to bookend this conversation?
No, just trying to find a pun.
Oh, you've always been a punny guy.
Absolutely. As
Oh,
I say to people, you can either say I have panache, or you can consider that I have a pun ache. Spelled the same.
exactly. Exactly. Um so okay, I want to conclude this live, Maddie, by asking you the very important question. I know and throughout the day the episode of Above and Beyond, a salute to the 30th anniversary of International Day of Persons with Disabilities has been playing, and you were on it, so thank you so much for doing that with us. Um, I want to conclude by saying it'll be on again at 6 o'clock, and then at 11 p.m. Yeah, Eastern time, cable14.com. Unfortunately, we're not able to put the directives in the live as we go along for technological reasons. But where do we go from here, Maddie?
We go with um, a call to allyship.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a call to, if you're not a person with disabilities, look around you. What are the barriers that you see people struggling with? And think, how can I help solve that barrier? If there's people around you that are trying to, people with disabilities trying to share a message about the barriers they're experiencing, how can you amplify that message? If you're part of a decision table that has the ability to make decisions that can affect people with disability, how could you bring people with disability to that table and put a megaphone in it so you can amplify their voice? Nothing about us without us is really, really necessary, so that the things that every level of government, every organization is doing, if it's going to affect people with disabilities, include people with disabilities at all stages. That's the call. It's the call to allyship. And we carry a burden of having to try to um, find solutions to our needs, and we need to have you share that burden with us.
Yeah, and share that burden with the confidence and the optimism that a solution is there waiting to be found
Yes.
together. Look at it from an investment, and I don't mean just necessarily money. Invest time, invest sweat equity,
Yeah.
invest money. because there's solutions waiting to be found. And on that note, Maddie, it's been a great conversation, my friend. You can chat along with us at Above Beyond for You, at Maddy Dever on Twitter, at Anthony_Frisina on Twitter, at Above and Beyond Pod on Facebook. Send us an email at Above and Beyond the Podcast at gmail.com, AnthonyFrisina.ca, AutisticRambler.com. Maddie, this has been a lot of fun as always. Happy
Yes, it has
International
been.
Day of Persons with Disabilities, my friend.
Yes, happy IDPWD Day, and I look forward to doing this again next year. Seeing things maybe a bit better.
Sounds good. We'll take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye, guys.